Hi, I'm Mr. Aguilar, and this is one of my support videos for my class. Today we went over drawing basic outlines, and that's our introduction to drawing under the unit of line. So what I like to do is do a demonstration and explain a few things that might happen to you while you're drawing and working on developing your art skills. So today, outlines only, and I'm going to show you what I'm drawing, and it's a coffee mug, tea mug, and there's a couple of things. When you're drawing something like this live, you have to understand that you're at a higher elevation and you're looking down at it. So anytime you're looking down at it, this is considered an interior line, exterior line. So when we draw our outlines, we're focused on just this outer edge of the line and then going into here. Okay, what we don't draw is we don't draw this inner part of the glass, and we don't draw this part right here where the handle touches the glass. We focus on just the negative shape that you're going to see here, and the outer shape, and then this outer shape here. We don't draw this shape right here. Okay, same goes for this interior line. We don't draw these. We're just looking at the basic overall shape, and we're looking at size and width, and we call that proportion and scale in art. So when I look at this, there's a couple of tricks that I can do. So I'm going to explain those tricks before I start. Number one, when you're looking at something with both your eyes, your brain's really taking two pictures and putting them into one. And what happens is the edges become a little fuzzy. By closing an eye when you're looking at an object, you'll automatically notice that all the edges become much crisper and sharper, and that's because your brain's only trying to interpret one image. So the easiest way to help you draw something, especially when you're observing it, get used to closing an eye, okay? Other things that you can do, you can take your pencil and you can use your pencil for measurements. So one of the things I do is you want to hold your pencil straight out in front of you, and you can measure your heights or you can measure your widths, and then you can compare them to each other. So I might look at this coffee mug, and according to my hand, this is my width. And when I look at the height, I can tell that the height is longer. It's about 1/4 longer than the width. So that really helps my interpretation when I start to draw. So I'm going to start top to bottom. Uh, it's easier that way. I think it has to do with how we're brought up with reading left to right, top to bottom. Uh, but in order to start the drawing, it's much easier. So I'm going to start with my basic curve, and I'm also going to point out a problem that you guys might run into while you're drawing, and it can get frustrating, but I'll explain what it is. So I'm going to draw this. So there's my main curve, and I'm going to look and see what the angle of is that lip, and I'm just going to put a line for that angle, and I'm just looking at it and measuring it, and then this is going to come straight down, and I want to see how far that's going to come down. It's about there, and then it's going to come in, and I'm going to measure that angle, and then just drop my pencil down to my paper, and that's going to give me that angle that I need for that curve. You're going to notice right now I'm not drawing any curves. What I'm doing is I'm getting my angle down, and I want to see what my width's going to be. So I'm going to come in here, put that in, and we'll add the curves later. Here's the top of my handle. Okay, and it really just kind of goes out. It really doesn't go up or anything. Then I'm going to look at how wide it is, and it's coming down about here. This line is going to continue, and here's a quick thing you can do. You can say, okay, that line can't go any lower than that, right? And then I'm going to bring it in, same angle, and I know it can't go any lower than that. So there's an imaginary line here, there's an imaginary line there. And then I want to look at that angle and that shape of what's coming out. Now, I'm going to start indicating where my handle is. Normally I don't even draw those. Okay, but I just kind of want to see where everything's at and what my angles are going to be. And again, I don't have any curves yet. So you'll see how this comes together once I start adding in my shape. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the inside of the handle, what that negative shape is. And that negative shape looks an awful lot like an ear on the side of a head. So if you're looking at someone's ear when their head's turned, that's that shape I should be getting. And again, curves, right? I want to get my angles down first. Then I'm going to add my curve. And you start seeing it come together here on the paper. And then basically I can look and see, okay, what's the width of this handle? How wide is it? It's going from wide, it's going to get a little bit narrow because of how it's angled. And if you notice, I'm holding my pencil back here. I want to keep my strokes light. I want to have a wide range of motion, and I want to be able to get my angles down before, and I think this is a little bit wider. So I'll make your adjustments. If you see something and it looks a little bit off, make your adjustments. So the curve of this glass is happening right here, but you can't see it because it's an outline. Then I want to see, okay, well, where's this angle coming from and how wide does it go? So I have this coming out, and it should line up right here. So I'm going to have that angle coming out, and then I'm just going to try to draw this little arc. And you're going to make mistakes. Your first line, it's probably not going to be your best line, but the nice thing is your initial line could be something that you can use to correct your drawing. So I think the biggest mistake a lot of people do is they'll keep erasing their initial line, and what happens is you keep redrawing the same line over and over again. You erase, you draw, you erase, you draw, you erase. Leave your mistakes there, because those mistakes will tell you where not to draw when you're fixing this. So now that I have my overall shape, now I'm going to start fleshing it out, adding in the curves. You want to put a nice holding line on this. So a holding line is going to be a darker, thicker, bolder line. You're also going to take this time to clean up the artwork a bit. And by doing this, you're going to see automatically that it's going to appear darker in the camera, and you're going to see it a little bit more clearly. So one quick trick. Here's a side note, because I'm about to do this. Okay, if I have two angles and I know that this ends in a curve, I'm not going to sit there and try to do this. I'm not going to try to make that curve freehand. I'm going to draw this angle, I'm going to draw that angle, and then I'm going to come in and connect the two angles and draw my curve. Okay, and now I'm going to have a really nice curve. And I'm going to bring this up a little higher to the camera so you can see that curve. Okay. Unfortunately, while I'm recording the hover cam, it doesn't have a zoom feature. If I hook the hover cam up to a projector, I can zoom in and out in the classroom. But I just found out, as I started doing this, I can't do that. So I'm going to start connecting, and I'll hold it up higher when I'm done with this. And you're going to see now my curves are coming in, and I'm going to come in here, and then I just connect my lines. And while I do this, I'll look and adjust, I'm going to connect these lines. Now I'm going to connect these lines here. So you can see how that curve is starting to happen now. Where before it was just angular, boxy, and you didn't have a whole lot of curves. And then I come in on this side and I'm going to do the same thing. Now I flip the paper over because I'm drawing a curve in the opposite direction. Always rotate your paper so you can get your curves in. And if you notice, I'm getting these dark lines while I'm in the middle of my pencil. This is where pinching comes in. I want to keep that wide range of motion, but I want to have darker values. So in order to keep my wide range of motion and have my darker values, I got to pinch. The other way you can do this, and the easier way to do this, is you use two different pencils. You use a hard pencil like a 2H or a 4H. You sketch it out lightly, and then you get like a 2B or a 4B pencil, and you go back over and clean it up everything and add your curves. That 4B pencil is really soft. It doesn't take a lot of pressure. Same thing with the 2B. It doesn't take a lot of pressure to get your lines dark. And that's how you do this, okay? So what you want to do is you need to practice. You can practice from photos, but you're better off just grabbing random things around the house. And I would start with something simple. Okay, I would start with maybe a standard coffee mug that's easier than this one. This one has a lot of curves on it. It's part of the reason I grabbed it, because it allows me to demo more. But I would start very simple objects. Try to get your outlines accurately, and the more you practice, the more your eye will get trained, and the better your eye gets, the better your drawings will get. The other thing to keep in mind, and you can ask anybody who's drawn for a long time, you could ask any illustrator, amateur, professional, really doesn't matter. There's going to be days where you can't draw, right? You're like, I've done this 1,000 times, right? Easy, 1,000 times. Why can't I draw today? Some days you're off. And again, I'll go back to basketball. You know, you look at Klay Thompson or Curry, best three-point shooters, right? But they have games where they can't hit a three-point shot. It's not often, right? It's a rarity. But you know, there's days when you don't have it. You look at football, quarterbacks in the NFL, right? He looks at some of the great throwers in the NFL. Some of them have really horrible games, right? They just don't have it that day. And that goes for art too. There's days where you don't have it. Okay, so here it is. The curves have been added. One thing that you might find that happens to you, and it happens a lot, and you might get frustrated, and the worst part, you'll get more frustrated because you won't understand why it's happening to you. Anytime you draw on a flat surface like I'm doing, because I have the camera presentation and I'm recording this, you can skew your drawings. And skewing means you're going to lengthen your drawings this way, right? And that's because you're working flat. Normally, when you draw, you have an art board. Your art board sits on your art table, and you're at about a 45-degree angle when you're drawing. That means you're drawing on the same plane that your body is. When it's flat, you're now reaching, and what happens is you tend to draw things longer, and visually it's going to look okay until you hold it up. And then you're like, wow, that's really long. It's called skewing. The best way to avoid it, have an art board that you can lean up against a table, or have a drafting table that you can lift up. And I'll show you a trick right here. So here's the thing. Now, as I move it up, it's going to appear shorter and fatter, right? So this actually looks a little bit more accurate to what's in front of me. and then as I do this, it's going to get longer. So here you're going to see it's going to look a little bit shorter and squat. Now visually, when I look at this on camera, it looks more like the mug in front of me. When I do this, it looks a lot taller than it really is. Um, so if you don't want to skew, you need some kind of drawing support at a 45-degree angle. That's the only way you're going to get around it. I don't think it's a big deal drawing on a flat surface for practice. However, if this was going to be for like a final illustration and I need it to be accurate in scale and proportion, I would never draw it on a flat surface. I'd have it at an angle surface on my drafting table, which has now become my desk for recording this stuff at home. Hopefully you got something out of it. I had to move off camera a few times. Want to get in front of the paper while doing the demo. So this is what we call outlines. Okay, and this is what you want to do. For my class, they have to draw 4 different things. I'd keep them fairly basic. Try something hard if you want, but you have to do 4 outline drawings for my class. The other thing that I start to do is I start grabbing multiple objects and having them touch each other, and then I draw the overall outline shape that those objects form. So if you have 2 objects, right, or if we add a third object, what is the overall shape that these 3 objects are making together? And you want to look at your negative space, like this little ramp that you see here. And you want to be able to draw those negative spaces. The reason you always draw outlines, and when you do something like this, the reason you want to group it, if you just draw this eraser by itself and this eraser by itself and this mouse by itself, what tends to happen is they tend to be drawn all at the same size. Meaning this eraser is drawn at the same size as this, it's just bigger, and then the mouse, and everything looks the same. When we get caught up in details, we lose all sense of proportion and scale. So in order to combat that, the best way to do this is to draw the whole thing as one shape, and you can have some other kind of lines indicating. Avoid details, avoid shading, avoid doing anything extra other than the outlines. Once you are happy with your scale and your proportion, that's when you go in and you start adding details. That's when you go in and start shading and adding values. If you start adding details too soon, you're going to find at the end your drawing is going to be completely unproportional. It's going to be completely off, and you're going to get very, very frustrated. Okay, so don't skip the fundamentals. Okay, do your warm-ups, and no matter how far you get into drawing or illustrating, don't forget your fundamentals. You forget your fundamentals, it's the easiest way to get frustrated and get annoyed with the whole process. Okay, so have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.